And welcome to this episode of Season 5 of the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and often guests as we have today, talk about digital topics, including the world of online communications and digital inclusion, in a show which was the brainchild of digital storyteller, the late John Popham. And we'll go straight to our special guest today, Moses. How are you? Where are you? And how's the weather been where you are this week?
Thanks so much, Pauline. Thanks, Sweyn. We are in Kentish Town, and it is as hot as it is where you are, I'm sure.
Well, I don't know about that. Sweyn, what about you? You can go ahead and say what your weather's like.
Well, I'm in Orkney as usual, and in Kirkwall today it's overcast, slight breeze, very cool. I could do with a couple more degrees of heat, but no.
Perhaps we could do an exchange.
Yeah, well, I think we could. Yes, on average, we're all fine. Yeah.
Well, here in
Oh,
Birmingham, sorry.
I should just say, if you can hear the sound of mowing grass, that's because there is somebody mowing grass just outside the door.
Always handy. In Birmingham, it has been lovely and it continues to be lovely. Although we've had some rain, but not at a time when I want to be outside. So I'm really grateful for that. Yesterday, in where I live, was the Open Gardens weekend, and I saw some beautiful gardens. So they've obviously benefiting from whatever the rain has been like. So today we're delighted to welcome our special guest, Moses Seitler from Screenshare, and I am desperately trying to to get to the notes. Moses, we're grateful that you could join us today. Um, Let me see. We actually what we did we found a lot of events today as well to cover, and so they've kind of confused me a little bit. Okay, here we go. So Moses says on his LinkedIn profile, the value he adds to professional projects is a combination of deep commitment, vision, positivity, flexibility, and a strong network. He brings knowledge of and experience in digital inclusion, refugee support, charity fundraising, social enterprise, lived experience leadership, refugee education, youth advocacy, volunteer management, communications, marketing, community building, and human rights education to his work. So that sounds like a marvelous combination. Moses set up Screenshare in 2021 when half his caseload at his previous work stopped making progress during the pandemic because of digital exclusion. He was shocked there wasn't a proper nationwide solution to the problem of refugee digital exclusion and upset that refugees had yet another barrier to overcome to achieve their goals. He absolutely loves the work. It's not just a bit of fun. They're trying to solve the problem. His role is to pursue the right strategic direction, raise the cash to deliver services, and ensure Screenshare service users are the fulcrum of their work. So, Moses, thanks for joining us on the show today. Welcome to the show.
thanks so much. That's a very kind intro. Don't believe everything you read on the internet, but that is generally a decent explainer. And thank you so much for having me, and not only having me on the platform, but for the work that you guys are doing. I had the pleasure of watching a couple of episodes of the Dr. Tech Show over the past few lunch times, and I can see you really promoting the work that we're doing on the ground to close the digital divide. So huge respect to you guys.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much, Moses. I don't know if you ever got the chance to meet our founder, John Popham, but he was a titan in the social media world, and we miss him very much. He died during lockdown, unfortunately, of cancer. But right up to the end, he was promoting and helping people to find their way online, getting people to tell their stories, which is was a key part of what he did and what we tried to do as well to carry on. So we'd be delighted to hear any stories you've got to share with us, any information you want to share. It sounds like a brilliant initiative what you're doing.
I'd be happy to do so, but before I do so, I'd say that I had a similar experience to the late John Popham, and it's fantastic to see that this show has continued. My understanding from one of the previous episodes was that in COVID, he became very much aware of this ridiculous situation, really, where you've got on the one hand everyone going online and operating almost exclusively online,
Mm,
and then on the other hand, people who are completely offline, and that cannot be right. I think we all know that, and but the good news, I think, is that some of my friends are working on you know human rights issues and challenges which seem at points intractable. And digital inclusion, it isn't actually rocket science. There are lots of disused IT assets. There are corporates who are citadels of digital skills, it's actually a resource allocation issue. And
Yeah.
so it's for that reason that I'm extremely optimistic, and I have the full intention of telling my children further down the line that in the olden days there was a situation where some people, they weren't online at all, and they'll say, what, that makes no
Ridiculous.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our reality and the way that we came about was that I was working for a refugee charity at the time, and a very simple fact became quite clear quite quickly, which was that the impact of the refugee support intervention was intrinsically linked to the extent to which the individual was digitally included, which is
Yeah.
a posh way of saying no laptop, no job.
Hmm.
You just can't help someone into employment. You
Yeah.
can't help someone into education. Or it just doesn't work. So I think one of our kind of our challenges is trying to convince the world who that people have no devices. I mean, most of the narrative about our relationship to technology is about, well, that's it's gone too far. We're cyborgs and we need to have a digital detox. And I'm saying, well, actually, there are people who, by definition, you can't actually see or hear, who need a kind of digital nourishment. And that's what we're doing. On the ground, it looks essentially like three things: the provision of devices, the provision of internet connectivity, and the provision of digital skills training. And I thought it was so interesting in the government's new definition of digital inclusion that they included the idea of confidence.
Yes.
Yes.
That is
Absolutely.
That's a big
is
step forward.
We talk about that a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's really well. And if I could just paint a picture of the people that we're working with, the people who have escaped, have no intention of leaving their countries. They've travelled across the world, and they get to the UK, and they think, and perhaps they assume, or they hope, great, I'm sorted, perfect, I've found safety. And actually, it's the beginning of a whole other process, digitized process, asylum process, e-visas, staying in touch with people at home, accessing services, accessing benefits if necessary. And that all happens online. So we're trying to not only provide the actual pieces of the puzzle, but also a community to kind of help them grow in confidence and make the mistakes that we all make with new software and technology, so that further down the line, I have a full expectation that there'll be someone 10 Downing Street who will say, 15 years ago, Screenshare gave me a laptop and that allowed me
Yeah.
to get involved in running
Absolutely.
things in this country.
My understanding, Moses, as well, is that refugees, before they get asylum status, their devices, their phones, get taken off them by the Home Office, and so they're even more disadvantaged than they might have been otherwise. So there's like a double whammy there. Yeah.
And generally, I mean, I had a really interesting idea recently about the power of the keyboard, which is to say that you can be connected. There's a type of exclusion where you are connected, and many refugees do have phones, but it's actually the keyboard, be able to write a document or submit a form in detail, and that makes the difference. I mean, there was some. You mentioned the removal of phones on security grounds. Sometimes I must admit, I go into the darkest corners of Facebook to see what people are saying about refugees. There was one person that posted, the government are giving them phones. They're giving them phones. And I thought, actually, we're doing that. And because the government aren't doing it. And we're confident enough to say, actually, digital inclusion can be an answer to some of the challenges that we face in the immigration system. The main challenge is that it takes ages and there's a backlog. And actually, if the individuals are included digitally and the process is effective from a digital perspective, then we should be able to move through the system
more efficient
quicker, and there'll be less pressure on the on services and on housing and such like.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've heard you talk on other presentations, Moses, and I know you're constantly asked for how the numbers and what the demand is, and like and are you? My question is, are you covering all parts of the country, or are you concentrated in one part of the UK?
It's interesting you asked that, because a lot of digital inclusion charities are hyper local for good reason. It just makes more sense from a practical perspective. We started off in London. We never expected to have this many resources. And people started to email us saying, what is my crime for living in another city? And we started off in lockdown, so actually a lot of our distribution was via post anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought, well, let's experiment. And so we do provide devices and SIM cards across the UK. Digital Skills is currently only in London, although we have just launched online sessions for kind of intermediate digital skills. Really basic digital skills is very, very difficult to do remotely for obvious reasons. But I think one key thing, principle which really guides us is, we don't have all the answers, and actually effective digital inclusion work depends on leveraging existing relationships of trust between clients and the people that are supporting them. And so we can't just turn up in Edinburgh and say, right, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Actually, we need to think, 1 second, what's the
Yes.
need? Let's
Yeah.
collaborate with people on the ground. But ultimately, that is the plan, because the need is extreme. We've got 176 organizations on our partner waiting list. And I think that's tough. But
Yeah.
also in terms of getting access, I mean, one of our challenges is we get calls and they say, I'm completely offline. I need you to get me offline. And I think, well, you have managed to call me and find
Yeah.
out about us. So you do have some element. Doesn't mean they're not entitled to some degree of support. But one of the key values of working in partnership on the ground across the country is I can't really access people who are fully digitally excluded in Belfast if I don't have a good relationship on the ground.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why, to really find the people who are unfortunately really digitally excluded.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And how do people get involved with the organization, and what kind of support, what kind of talents are they bringing to the table?
Well, this is what's so funny. You think that a charity case walks through the door, and you think they're going to be, refugees are poor refugees. We understand them in humanitarian terms. But actually, these are people who have had the strength to travel across the world, the resilience to overcome challenges, and they speak perhaps not particularly good English, but a kind of language of tech. We can now say hard drive in about 9 different languages, and that's because people across the world are interested in and how do these machines work. It's quite extraordinary things.
Yes.
So it can be a bit tense when we meet a new person for the first time. We take the back off a laptop and there's a sigh of relief. Oh, I understand that. Oh, I'm going to take this and put it here. I'm going to take this out and take it there. So that kind of that collaboration is really nice. In terms of how we actually help, we're dishing devices out, dozens a month. Couple of types of internet connectivity, SIM cards, and there's some great tech. Jangala has got this amazing box where you put a little SIM card in there, and that can really make the difference. And then there's digital skills, which is more expensive, and you get less bang for your buck, and it can be quite tricky because you spend an hour teaching someone how to change the font in a spreadsheet, and it gets to minute 58, and they still haven't managed it. And you think, this is going to be a challenge, but what we're really trying to do is build a community which is ongoing, where we say, don't worry, come back tomorrow. We're going to work on this. We're going to invest in digital capability. And soon, you're not going to come to these sessions anymore. There's nothing better than someone inviting a client to a class and them saying, I actually don't need that anymore.
or else they'll be coming to help somebody else, which is what we used to do with social media surgeries, and I hope that's happening as well. I was going to ask you as well about repairing devices. And are people there's a project in Birmingham called Recognition Circular, where young people fix devices and then they get to sell them or to get jobs in tech careers. Can you see any of that happening with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so we had the situation where clients would receive devices and they'd want to come into the office and get involved in the refurbishment process. And that was really fun. But then more and more people were coming in. It was becoming it was becoming a lot of activity. And they wanted to buy batteries and new screens. That, then I had to be involved. And we thought, wait a second, let's turn this into a course. And we launched a Know Your Tech course with help of Virgin Media O2. And it's really nice because it basically formalizes that process. It takes someone from limited knowledge of laptop repair, laptop refurbishment, and gets them to kind of level 2 essentially. We're not getting we're not soldering just yet, but it's kind of it's encouraging them to go out into their communities and actually help others if their devices break down,
Yeah.
and kind of instill this idea of moving away from fast tech. You know, the answer to a broken laptop isn't necessarily a new laptop.
Absolutely.
So getting them involved, and the other nice thing about that is that we're breaking bread once the devices have been put to the side, and it creates a bit of a community. The challenge is, we didn't really expect it to go this way, but someone comes to, you know, they've done 50 hours of tech repair training, and they say, right, I'm ready to work, and my status has come through. Let's go. And that's difficult because we don't provide a commercial repair service.
No.
We can provide IT repair for free to people who need it.
Mm-hmm.
But one of our challenges now is trying to work out how do we convert these trained individuals into into work for them. So that's what we're working on, trying to commercialize it.
Yeah.
A quick
Sorry, go on, Sweyn.
technical question. I noticed even from the website that you were focusing on laptops rather than other devices. How are you viewing and how are you coping with the big Windows 10 transition?
Yeah, well,
Windows 11 transition, I should say.
Yeah, this is the biggest. This is a big challenge, and we've resolved it in our answer is this: instead of trying to work out what the client wants, and we've got a very broad use case because refugee is a very broad category.
Yes.
What about asking them? So we get them in and we say, you've basically got 3 options. We can turn the device into, we can put Chrome OS, Chrome Flex on the device. We can put Linux on the device.
Yep.
Or we can go with Windows 10. And just so you know, these are the risks.
Okay.
And so far, it's been the latter 2. People don't really want Chrome Flex, I'm afraid.
No.
But they don't mind Linux. In fact, what we found is that we've emailed and messaged and say, do you want Linux? And they'd say, oh, no. And then we thought, well, let's bring them in. When we get a laptop up with Linux and we go, here's your laptop, what do you think of it? And they go, oh, perfect, this is great.
Right. Yeah.
And you think, well, actually, and then you obviously explain the differences between Linux and Windows, but putting choice back into the hands of the client, I think is the next best solution beyond shouting at Microsoft.
Which is always the best thing to do, and very, very, very satisfying to the soul, I always find as well. So there we are.
Absolutely. How are you getting on with funders, Moses? My other question was, when devices are up for grabs, as they sometimes are, how are you making the case for people donating devices to your charity rather than another organization, shall we say?
Great question. So with respect to that one, what we're doing, full service. So the idea is it's not just the device, it's also reliable internet connectivity and digital skills training, where we will meet with the individual when we give them the device, establish an independent learning plan, and then provide bespoke ongoing support. And one element of that bespoke support is actually establishing what are their digital needs and what type of device is it that will invest in their digital capability. We can't have cases where, coders are given Chromebooks and children are given MacBook Pros. It doesn't make sense. And so what we provide is a bespoke investment in their digital capability. And we've also now got into the practice of essentially exchanging devices. I mean, if we receive anything with Apple Silicon, it just doesn't make sense to give it out because you can get 3 really good quality laptops for that. Yeah. And so beyond the bespoke holistic approach is actually kind of impact maximization, if you will, to say, actually, you're giving me 100 assets, but we can turn them into 250, say.
Yeah.
When it comes to funders, it's going okay. I mean, touch wood, and I can already feel my March 2026 headache coming. But fundamentally, we've got we're having success with that fundamental idea, which is that if you don't have digital inclusion, it actually neuters other types of support. And
Absolutely.
we're not just another charity. We're trying to undergird other charities. But as I said offline, we were mentioning a case with a few hundred assets coming into the charity sector. We collaboration, especially in small charities, is so important that
Mm,
if assets are going to people in need and it's been doing done in a thoughtful way, then that's fine with us.
good. Oh,
Yeah.
one more thing I wanted to ask you. I know you're going to have to go soon. Was about the other element of the digital inclusion framework, if you like. Yes,
Mm.
yes, people need devices and data and digital skills and connectivity, but the tech companies also need to be more responsive, we think, to the needs of people who are digitally excluded. So that if they continue to remain without a device, without the things to link to the digital world, they should receive just as good services. It shouldn't be an excuse for people not to be excluded because they're not online. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's tricky. I saw an interesting post on LinkedIn, which basically said, if people don't want to be um, online, then let them be offline. And I like that, as it's centered in individual liberty. But I'm worried about that. I'm worried about that idea because fundamentally, whether we like it or not, there are a number of important technological processes which have no democratic authority, such as AI and digital transformation. And so and the internet, you can even include the internet in that. So unless there's a referendum on this stuff, I think we need to accept the direction that things are going in.
Mm,
And I went to my grandfather's house last night, and he said, "I just my phone's out of battery, and why would I plug it in again? It's caused such a difficulty. He was so pained by it, and I thought perhaps the answer is to just write him a letter instead of giving him a call. But my view, and you can push back on it, is actually people, however low on confidence they are, they do need to be encouraged to get online, because the right to be offline, I don't think it's that great in a world which is fundamentally digital. What
yeah,
do
I
you
mean,
think?
I've been spending a lot of time around people examining and getting used to AI at the moment in the charity world. I chaired a conference on it last week, the week before, and I'm getting increasingly reluctant. I'm starting to think there's no there's no good AI. There's just less bad AI, and I worry
Mm.
about the effect on that on people who have low digital skills, low tech connection. I just think we're not being critical enough of tech companies and companies who refuse to provide an equally good service to people who aren't online. And I'm going to stand on that for a while and see how I get on.
Good luck.
I don't think those two positions are necessarily mutually exclusive. I mean, we will always all continue to encourage people as much as possible to get to a level of digital confidence that suits their life position.
Mm,
We will
mm,
all do that. Uh, but that doesn't mean to say that for those who are unpersuadable or have other challenges or reasons not to get to that point, that we don't look for ways to support them
Yeah.
by kind of mediated online access, if nothing else. Because
yeah.
any human access, any non-digital access to most services will come via another human, but that human will be fully digital.
Mm,
So
yeah. Yeah.
it's just redefining those relationships for people who, for one reason or another, can't or won't take part, and it's accepting the kind of old-fashioned view of kind of universal access to things, which the public sector understands because everyone has rights against the state, but which the private sector, to some extent or another, doesn't have to do. And it's in those sorts of areas that I think making sure that a service for those who can't or won't be very much online at all are actually available in some form or another that goes alongside always
Mm,
encouraging people
mm,
to do it as it were for themselves. And I mean I think that part of that encouragement should be to say that you're unlikely to get the same level of service unless you do go online. But if you really don't want to, there are things you can do.
hmm
Sorry, that's a
Yeah.
bit of a rant and
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, and I mean, I thought for me, Pauline,
I don't hear
I
that
really
very
want.
often.
I want to know, what's the constitution of that accountability
Yes.
Mm,
on tech firms? I mean, it can be easy to shake our fist, but I want to know what the levers are. Where's the legislation to make sure that we can actually say, well, one second, you've rolled out this product on these terms, and you haven't kept to it. It's a tricky market to be in because they are, bigger than nation states. But
mm,
I'm happy that we're having this conversation about our
Yeah.
relationship to tech and,
Yeah.
and big
Absolutely.
companies' role in things. And I'll also add, while we're talking about big companies, one of the solutions to digital exclusion is for manufacturers to just make devices
mm.
or give. I mean, that's really. I haven't come across a digital inclusion charity who's got really decent partnership with their actual manufacturer.
Oh wow.
No.
Yes.
And
That's
No.
going. That's going
Mm,
back to the old idea of the what was it, $50 laptop or something of 10 or 15 years ago. I mean,
right. I mean,
that was aimed at overseas development, and I don't think it really ever properly took off. But
okay.
it'd be interesting to revisit some of the arguments around that at that time and see what could be done. Yeah, for sure.
I've
Great
also
idea.
I do a lot of Duolingo for language purposes, obviously, and a certain company similar to Amazon, but with begins with T and ends in U, is offering free tablets to people if they sign up for that company's platform. And I'm wondering if anybody has encouraged people to sign up for these tablets and see if they're, I mean, that's one way of getting
Oh,
devices.
yes.
But I don't know if anybody
Be
has
lovely. Be very entertained to
investigated that. Yes,
be very entertained
do
to
a
find out what those
an
devices are actually
onslaught.
like.
Mm,
I like your thinking, Pauline. I was at the launch of the of BSIT's IT Reuse for Good Charter the other
yes.
day, and in theory, the goal of the charter is to clear the way for corporates to give loads and loads of devices. And I'm young and optimistic and perhaps naive enough to think this whole question of, oh, how do we try and get IT assets? We're going to be tripping over them in a few minutes' time.
Yeah, I think so.
And ultimately, as I said right at the beginning, this isn't some complicated mathematical problem. There are loads of disused IT assets because fundamentally, and peculiarly, businesses write off the value of the asset in accordance with the warranty, even though the device lasts longer than the warranty.
Mm,
And so we're not far away. Things are getting in place, and I think that instead of competing with other organizations for assets, actually soon we're going to be maybe a bit more kind of dynamic exchange. Okay, well,
Um,
our clients need
Here's
this, your clients need that.
I've
mm,
just had another idea. Why can't we describe it? Why can't we define a British standard or an ISO standard for end of life, end of commercial life devices?
Yeah,
Because it's an absolutely understood problem what you have to do. I mean, lots and lots of organizations have been doing it for really quite a long time now.
yeah,
And yes, there is the trickier business of plugging those devices into people who can use them effectively and getting the right device for the right person. That's the
mm,
tricky bit. But
mm,
the bit that says, collect 100 devices from a firm that doesn't want them anymore and wants to give them to you, th- the only decision really that's got any trickiness to it at all is whether you trust them to delete the data or whether they trust you to delete the data. After
mm.
yeah,
that, it's a completely straightforward process. I
yeah.
love the
And it's
trains going past in the background, by the way. I have to say that. I love
Fascinating.
that.
Yeah. The uh, the
and
the the part of me though that has to fly the flag for charities, and I do it willingly, says why should we be settling for the kind of what the leftovers of what
mm,
corporates are willing to get rid of? And I mean that I know that's a whole other discussion, but it does gall me sometimes that we in the in our sector have to settle for the kind of half-life that's left in devices when everybody else gets new devices.
There is
Digital,
there is
di-
there is that, but and also it's slightly at odds with the kind of the push for environmentally aware use of
yeah.
devices because that's encouraging organizations to make use of their devices for longer as long as they
Mm-hmm.
possibly can. So that will
Mm.
impact on the
On the
age of the device
supply,
that
yeah,
comes out the
yeah,
other
yeah,
end.
absolutely.
So there is a whole set of issues there.
Mm,
But in general terms, and there are all sorts of exceptions to this, there's a large number of people with a use case that's that's more simple and straightforward, less technically intense
mm,
than the average business or commercial user. There are some that have more demands and some, but in general, there is that kind of period in the life of a device where that's a good use of it in terms of environment, in terms of environmentalism, in terms of kind of public good.
Mm,
But I take your point. It's a bit annoying that you can't have
yeah.
the nice one, the nice new shiny ones. But what we're saying to businesses is you shouldn't always, in environmental terms, is you shouldn't always be buying nice new shiny ones either. You should be considering whether you can refurbish either your own or somebody else's
Mm,
devices. So I do wonder whether, in fact, charities will be falling over big piles of devices, or whether that message will mean that the supply continues to be, less than infinite.
mm, mm,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's been interesting to
Yeah.
see.
Well, my bet is that this is only going one way, and
Yes,
the
I'm
whole
sure you're
fact
right.
that we had to have debates about digital exclusion will soon
Mm.
be history.
I hope so.
Because
No, that sounds great.
something to
I,
do
I
about it. Thank
absolutely
you
hope
so
Yeah.
so.
much for having me. Excuse me while I
Thank
jump
you.
off.
Thanks for joining us,
Okay, thanks,
Moses.
Moses. Lovely to
Keep
speak
in
to you.
touch. Thank you.
Cheers. All the best. Bye.
Bye-bye. Great. We
There
will
we
have
are.
details of Moses and
Very
his
interesting.
organization Screenshare on our notes on
They
the
are
YouTube.
already there, so that's
Okay,
good.
brilliant. Great. So if you have devices that you would like to give to a worthy cause, as we say, please do think of Screenshare as one of the possibilities to help refugees who are sometimes more disadvantaged than other. It is a bit of a lottery, but we hope we can help some more people along the way. Great. So Sweyn, we have our usual notes to go back to. As we started, went straight into Moses as he had to leave us to go to something else. So let's go to the what we usually start the show with, the dates. What dates have you picked up for us?
I have two today, and the first one is the International Day of Parliamentarism, which is a
Mm,
UN day, and it's celebrated every year on the 30th of June, which is, of course, today.
mhm,
Uh, and it's the date in 1889 on which the International Parliamentary Union was founded, and the day was established in 2018 through a United Nations General Assembly resolution. The day is particularly important at a time when parliamentary democracy and their peoples are kind of losing trust in each other. And the claim behind the day is that if democracy is to thrive, then parliaments, as the cornerstone of functioning democracies, need to be strong, transparent, accountable, and representative. So the day gives the time to review progress that parliaments have made in achieving some of those key goals, to be more representative and to move with the times, including carrying out self-assessments, working to include more women and young MPs, and adapting to new technologies, which is very relevant to us. And
yes.
this year, the focus is on the representation of women in national and local legislatures worldwide, and the fact that there are so few is limiting political rights for women and their influence over laws and budgets in many countries. UN Women advocates for more women leaders, supportive laws and skills building through policy dialogues and cross-party collaboration. So that is I'm not going to say that long word beginning with Parliament again. That's that day.
Yeah,
The
great.
second
Thank
one
you.
I've chosen is Canada Day,
Way!
which is
Don't
tomorrow,
know
the
why you've
1st of
chosen
July.
this, Sweyn, but I love it. No, I
Well,
do
it's
know.
all due to the links between Orkney and the Hudson's. No, it's not. Canada Day is celebrated annually on July the 1st, which is tomorrow, and the date marks the anniversary of the signing of the Constitution Act, which originally was the British North America Act in 1867,
Okay.
which united the provinces of Canada into a single country. And the day is a national statutory holiday, providing Canadians with an opportunity to participate in celebrations and community events. Should be noted that there are some sections of Canadian society, including Indigenous peoples and French, some French-speaking organizations, which are less enthusiastic about this particular day being celebrated, just as in America, Columbus Day or July the 4th is,
Mm-hmm.
it's problematic as well as
Yeah.
being a celebration for the nation. But anyway, it was originally known as Dominion Day,
Mm.
and it was it marked the anniversary of Canada's Confederation in 1867, as I already said. It was renamed Canada Day in 1982, following the patriation of the Canadian Constitution. In other words, the UK fully devolved the power of the Constitution back to Canada in 1982.
Only 1982. Wow.
So that's what it
Okay.
says here. I'm not sure
Mm,
the details of the history of that, but
mm,
the patriation of the Canadian Constitution suggests that there was some residual
mm.
power by the UK over the actual Constitution as opposed to the running of the country. I need to look that up. And so there's various events held across the country, and there we are. That's Canada Day.
Great. I must remember to send greetings to my Canadian friends
I've loads of
about
Canadian.
that.
I've
Yeah.
loads of Canadian relatives. One of
Ah,
my grannies, all 8 of her siblings emigrated to Canada in the 20s and 30s. So I've got hundreds of Canadian cousins.
okay. Good. Have you ever been there?
No, I haven't. No,
Mm,
people, various relatives, starting with the people who emigrated in the 50s and 60s have visited home, but there's
mm,
gradually, it's got down to now about third cousins that are visiting because of the passage of time.
mm-hmm.
It's good. It's a good
Well,
link.
I'm sure you'd get a great welcome if you did decide to go over there.
I'd love to. I'd love
So
to. Yes.
yeah, yeah, I hear great things about it, and it is sadly getting not very positive vibes from from the president of the US at the moment. So all power to the Canadians, and
Absolutely.
keep doing the great things that you do. Okay, we've picked up a number of events, a bigger number than usual, which was great to see because we always like to see events that people can go to and take part in. And the first one is on the 2nd of July, which is Thursday this week, Wednesday, sorry, Wednesday, and all the following Wednesdays in July. And this is a something I haven't seen like this before, but it's a free SIM and data bank being offered at a cafe in Birmingham, as I say, from this Wednesday and all the following Wednesdays in July, from 11 to 4. This cafe is offering a initiative offering free SIM cards and mobile data to anybody in need. So I'm going to go along. I can't go this week, but I'm going to go along next week and see what the how they're managing that, because the SIM cards are coming from the National Data Bank, the good thing that was run by the Good Things Foundation. And I know that you have to meet certain criteria to be able to get a SIM card. A criteria of I think it's income related and whether you have Wi-Fi at home, but maybe they're be more liberal. But it's great to see them getting this out to people because people often complain they haven't got enough data. So it's from 11 to 4 on the Wednesdays in July. The SIM cards are from the major UK networks, Vodafone, O2, and 3. The blurb for this event says they're going to support setting up mobile data. They have friendly volunteers to guide you, and the cafe is going to be a safe and welcoming space to connect and relax, and people can just drop in. So powered by the What's On agency and Good Things Foundation, this event aims to bridge the UK's digital divide by helping those with limited or no access to the internet stay connected. So it'll be good to see how that goes on. I know a lot of digital inclusion centres or hubs around the country supported by the Good Things Foundation are offering mobile data as well. So it's not confined to this organisation. I just haven't seen it offered in this way before.
That
So
focus on the actual SIM
yeah,
on the
and
actual.
well,
Yeah.
actually being there in a cafe,
Yes.
just drop in
It's
and
to
get
help.
it.
Yeah, because there must be a certain number of people who say, "What's a SIM?" and would
Mm,
struggle to fit it and all that stuff. That's great.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So yeah, very practical. Um, and the next event is happening in Crawley, and this is from the Scout Scouts Association nationally. They obviously have a new website, and they are offering to help people get to grips with. Sorry, I'm losing my page on my place on the page. Get to grips with the using the scouts.org.uk digital tools and help to understand the volunteer experience changes that have happened. So well done to the Scouts Association for organising this one. They're welcoming all West Sussex Scouts volunteers. They may welcome others if you were from a different part maybe, but anyway, you'd have to find out from them. They're suggesting that for online support in using the new digital system, you should check the digital tools guides to learn how to complete tasks and signing in to scouts.org.uk. So it sounds like it's for people who are helping out with the website scouts.org.uk. But they look like they're going to help anybody. So if you're involved in the Scout Association in West Sussex, please, I suggest you go along to find out what help you can give or get from other people to help you get set up.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah. Now next one's a bit more complicated. But it sounded interesting. So I decided to include this one. This is on Tuesday, the 8th of July, and the event is called Digital Inequalities in Financialized Late Capitalism. Bit
Aha.
of a mouthful, but and the heading, it went on, the subtitle is How Can Young People? I think it meant to say, how can young people, overcome this? And it's being offered by the Bauman Institute at the University of Leeds and the Centre for Research on Families, Life Course and Generations. And they are welcoming Dr. Stephen Threadgold, University of Newcastle, Australia, Dr. Julia Coffey, University of Newcastle, Australia, and Professor Roger Barrows from the University of Bristol. And the seminar will discuss aspects of inequality in digital practices as rentier capitalism, and this was a term I had to look up, an economic system where wealth is primarily generated through the ownership of assets rather than through the production of goods or services. And this involves individuals or companies extracting rent from others who need to access their assets, such as land, natural resources, or intellectual property. So they're discussing aspects of inequality in digital practices as rentier capitalism and the asset economy, which further entrench class domination. Key to this are processes of digitalization and financialization that lubricate the means to extract value out of more and more aspects of daily life, reinforcing traditional inequalities while creating new ones. And that may hark back actually to the conversation we were having with Moses about forcing people to be online if they don't want to be. Digital technology has changed the way young people go about their day-to-day practices, transforming relations to social structures, to each other and to themselves. Financialization processes have seen the emergence of fintech dovetail with rises in cost of living, educational expenses, and increasingly insecure work. So the blurb is a long one, and I've got it all on our grid, but I'm not going to read it all out here. But they're going to draw on research projects about young people's financial practices, big data, and algorithmic power. And they're going to interrogate aspects of these burgeoning concerns impinging on young people's capacities to create a livable future. They'll discuss aspects of change, methodological approaches to critically explore this time of digital proliferation, back to widening inequalities and increasing hostile socio-political environments. They're going to talk about doing inventive, feminist influenced research, youth research to understand and intervene in emerging digital trends. And they are saying that the datafied processes of evaluation, sorting and understanding to understand how inequality will be shaped in the future and who can access the means is central for young people to create a future. And I think our friend Kyra Allman used to talk about datafying processes excluding people. So that sounds like one that a lot of people might like to go to. Does it grab
Yeah, it
your
sounds great.
attention
It
at all,
certainly does.
Sweyn?
That's, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Excuse me.
Hmm.
Yes, I think that sounds fascinating. And it's basically, when we say we need to do something about all these huge tech firms that are doing this, that, or the next thing, this this is one approach to that issue.
Yeah.
And it would be very interesting to see how it how it looks, because certainly in the early days, social media and tech have always been presented as a great leveling, equalizing, um, democratic thing. But the way that they've turned out is that very few people have become very wealthy by owning and making available these things, and that's had all sorts of implications on our lives. And this this event looks like it's couched in the language of the social sciences, but there's
Mm.
nothing wrong with that once you get to grips with it. And it really does look as if it's looking at the fundamental issues there in a way that maybe isn't very often done.
Mm. Yeah. Very good. So well done to
Yeah.
University of Leeds for doing that, and we look forward to hearing more about that. If anybody wants to come on and talk about it, we'd love to hear from you. Another event on Tuesday, 8th of July in London this time at Portcullis House in London is the Parliament and Internet Conference 2025. I didn't know there was such a thing, but obviously
No.
there is, and it's now in its 18th year. The Internet Service Providers Association, ISPA, it's an annual conference organised by them, well established as the key event for the UK's internet and connectivity sector to engage with government and Parliament. It's sponsored by Dan Aldridge MP. I think he's chair of the Digital Inclusion APPG. And it says we're going to learn about the important ongoing work being done to ensure the UK has the access and resources necessary to become a tech-enabled digital nation. The blurb goes on to say, over the past 3 decades, the internet has transformed every aspect of our lives, as we often talk about, from how we communicate and work, access information and services, or even how we view our future security. However, after years of rapid growth, the landscape is shifting dramatically. We want to take a step back and look how far we have come, how the role of the ISP has changed over time, and how we can apply lessons learned to the future, ensuring all communities have the tools and access necessary to unlock the next phase of digital transformation as the government seeks to shape the UK's future for years to come. So it's 4 hours in the afternoon, and I've just picked out one of the sessions that's happening at 4:35 to 10 to 6 is Are We There Yet? Ensuring universal digital access across the UK, talking about very hard to reach areas to not spots. There are still areas of the UK struggling with access to future-proof digital connectivity. Why is this, and how does this impact communities, social and economically? What is the industry's role, and what support do they need for Parliament to achieve universal access? And also, as part of that, there's a panel and Q&A talking about the government's current commitment for fibre rollout is 99% by 2032. Is this realistic? How can Parliament, industry, and the third sector work together to make this possible? And the speakers of this panel, chaired by Daniel Aldridge, are Giles Robotham, the Chief Development Officer for Next Fibre, Thora Eberts, Director of Network Delivery for UK Youth, and John Duncan, Connected Places Lead, Greater Manchester Combined Authority, GMCA. That sounds like a panel well worth attending as well. I think it's an in-person event. I don't think they're offering anything hybrid, unfortunately, but hopefully there'll be
No, how
something.
would ISPs provide live streaming? It's almost impossible to understand.
No,
No,
bizarre. I
it's
actually I
a,
never.
it's a good event. It's an event that probably needs to happen, but it's I don't know. It's one of the ways that ISP, Internet Service Providers, role has changed is that to some extent they've been kind of overwhelmed by the social media um, organizations, which don't have to provide those nuts and bolts plumbing connectivity services in a way
Mm,
that ISPs do. I mean, basically, all the questions. I mean, this is almost to me the other end of the spectrum in terms of events from the previous one we talked about. This one is that age-old problem of the private sector and the government slugging it out as to who has to pay for
mm,
the difficult people to connect
yeah.
with wires or radio waves or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a good event. It'll allow ISPs to influence government's thinking on that point, but I don't see huge earth-shattering conclusions to come out from that organization, to be honest. And I,
Mm,
I kind of worry that because events like this include things like the Are We There Yet session,
mm,
that politicians can fall into the trap of believing that connectivity is all there is. It's kind of, I'm not going to say it's a confidence trick on behalf of the ISPs to get government funding, but that's what's going on here.
mm,
ISPs want the government to fund connections to the
mm,
maximum extent possible because that reduces their costs and
mm,
therefore you might argue might reduce their prices a bit to the rest of us, or it might increase the profits to their shareholders. Who knows? Um, but I think that the blurring of that basic connectivity question with the rest of all of this
mm,
is in some ways one of the reasons why we are where we are.
mm,
Because people used to assume that 10 or 15 years ago, most politicians would assume that the main problem is getting homes connected and getting phones into people's hands. We know that's not true. That's not the main problem. That's a relatively straightforward engineering problem that can be solved given enough resources. All the problems in terms of exclusion and confidence and skills and so on are far more difficult to actually address and make progress on. Anyway, I don't want to completely down this event because it is kind of important that these things are still discussed.
Mm,
But it just sometimes grates on me that what is basically obviously a group of organizations focused on getting the connectivity in place kind of stray into other areas and start hand waving and utopianizing their product. But
mm.
I hope it goes well anyway.
Okay,
That all came out
great.
much more negative than I really. So,
It's a view. It's a view. Moving on, we have an event to do with the library, and we haven't mentioned libraries
hooray!
on the program in the last few months, so let's give them a shout out. And this is Research and Academic Services at Warwick Library in near Coventry. They are running an event on the 10th of July from 10:30 to 3 called AI for Good, Building a Fair and Ethical Digital Ecosystem. And this event brings together academic experts and professionals with hands-on experience in data, ethics, and digital transformation to explore how artificial intelligence can be developed and applied responsibly, guided by the fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable principles, which I wasn't that familiar with before,
No, more nor me.
and with relevance across sectors in society. And the blurb promises that you'll hear from leading voices, and they are Professor Isabel Fisher from the University of Warwick, who's going to talk about exploring AI for student assessments as part of a collaborative assessment ecosystem, strategies for responsible use by students and staff. Runs off the tongue, that one. Uh,
Interesting.
Aisha Hussain from the University of Leeds on the future of AI in science and industry to the lens of fair data, and Professor Tom Sorrell, University of Warwick, on AI, ethics, extremism, and gaming. And I think it's the gaming
Wow.
part caught my eye because I have contact with Nick Poole at UKI Gaming and Karen Newman here in Birmingham at BOM, Birmingham Open Media, and they'd talk a lot about gaming, obviously, and I'm always interested to see how people are kind of using gaming to kind of explore some of these topics that we talk about. So, the panel discussion topics are: what does responsible AI in apostrophes look like across sectors? Making AI fair, as in that acronym, challenges and opportunities in data governance, and aligning AI innovation with societal good. And this is part of the University Library's initiative under the Leveraging Fair Principles and AI to Enhance Research Collaboration and Societal Impact project. And the blurb does say the symposium is designed for anyone interested in the future of AI, data ethics, and responsible innovation. And again, one of those ones that you think, oh, that might be interesting,
Hmm.
like a what you call it, unconference session that you didn't
Yes.
really think of it going to. But yeah, I think that would be good. And as I say, recently chaired an event for the West Midlands Funders Network on AI, so I'm keen to know more. But as I say, my bent these kind of, I'm more inclined to consider AI to be less bad than good at the moment. So
Interesting.
I'm willing to
We'll
be
have to,
persuaded, though, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think responsible AI is very important and good to have that framing of it. Anything you like about that event, Swain?
Sounds great.
Mm.
I hadn't heard the findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable principles either, but they're when you see it written down, that's a very good lens to look at this sort of thing through.
Is that was it, would that you could you use that to describe open data? I suppose you could.
I think that those principles will be applicable to any area of data or knowledge or
Mm,
whatever. I
yeah.
would have thought. Basically, yeah, I'm gonna have to look it up a wee bit and see where it comes
Mm,
from. Yeah, I
yeah.
think open data would absolutely be interesting to look at through those kind of factors. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Great. Another event in the middle of July we found Thursday, Tuesday, 15th of July is in Plymouth, and it's called Cybercrime and Scams: Protecting Communities in a Digital World. And this is led by Mick Harrison from the Devon and Cornwall Police Cyber Protect team, covering what cybercrime is and how it's evolving, common scams and how to spot them, sorry, how criminals target individuals and communities, and practical steps to protect yourself and those around you. And this is for a church community, I think, but they're offering it to anybody who's involved in the church ecosystem, I think, a church leader, community volunteer. I beg your pardon, I'm sneezing now.
There we
Or
go.
simply
It's
it's
catching.
infected. Yeah, I simply want to stay informed This session will help you understand the risks and empower you to be proactive in digital safety for yourself and your community. And this is an event hosted by Transforming Plymouth Together as part of the resource series offered free of charge to churches across Plymouth. Okay, so they are targeting churches, but I think if you pick up some information from this, you can obviously apply it in other places. So interesting to see the police involved in delivering this, because normally it's charities getting, other charities
Yes, that's
to do the
interesting.
information. So yeah,
Um, that's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
good. Okay, let's go on. We've got a few minutes to pick up. We do one or two stories maybe. The first one is No Connection, No Chance, and this is about people facing digital poverty, as we know in the UK. And at this organization called Simpal, they've launched a No Connection, No Chance campaign to raise £15,000 in 2025 to supply reconditioned mobile phones to those most in need. Are you able to play that short video, Sweyn?
Yes, I can do that.
Great.
Hi,
It's
my
2
name
minutes.
is Chris Lewis and I'm the founder of Simpal, a UK registered charity that's completely unique in the fight against digital poverty. At Simpal, we provide free pre-loved mobile phones, refurbished gadgets and prepaid SIM cards with 20 plus gig of data per month for 6 months, all at no cost to those in need. Our services are open to anyone across the UK, whether you're living with cancer, struggling with poor health, or facing digital poverty. Applications are simple and can be made through our website. All phones are 4G enabled to do email and WhatsApp. We work closely with third-party organisations like the NHS, Citizens Advice, schools, councils, and homeless charities to reach as many people as possible. Also, we collaborate with organisations in the complex immigration sector. Life in the UK is tough for many, and staying connected is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. Simpal started in 2016, inspired by my own cancer journey. We began by helping people with cancer, but expanded after COVID to support anyone affected by digital poverty. We're proud to be entirely volunteer-run and receive no government funding. Everything we do relies on donations. This is a very dynamic sector, and our support is always subject to need priority and availability. Demand for our services is increasing rapidly, and while we do everything we can to help, supply cannot always be guaranteed. Together, we can make a real difference in someone's life. Thank you for your support.
Great. And we may see if somebody from Simpal can come on the show sometime to talk about how they're getting on with this. They're not looking for very much money. £15,000 seems like a very small amount of money to supply
Yes.
reconditioned mobile. So I think, we don't normally do advertising or anything on this show. So but because it's, you know, the same theme as we support, then yeah, we'd like people to consider this. Okay. I think we'll cover one last story. Is that all right, Sweyn? I can't hear you.
Oh dear, I'm
Oh dear.
muted and everything. Oh well.
Yeah, and you're on.
Yes, you go. I'll
Okay, so
catch up.
you've got Moses' LinkedIn page on the screen right now.
Yes, which is not quite what I wanted, but we'll
Well,
try again.
yeah.
You introduce it and I'll find the.
Okay, this is a story from LinkedIn, from Emma Weston, our friend, the CEO of Digital Unite, and she was writing about the spending review. Was it good for digital inclusion? I think we might have mentioned it in a previous show, but it's always worth revisiting, especially if Emma's talking.
Yes.
She says the clear positives are there was a strong commitment to digital transformation and technological advancement through the spending review. Also, a specific mention of £6 million funding for local digital inclusion in Chris Bryan's speech on the same day at London Tech Week, a speech in which he highlighted the huge economic risks of digital exclusion, and he spoke about the impact of digital champion models, which is great to hear. Looking at the spending review as a whole, Emma says it's striking that digital inclusion also appears interwoven, sometimes implicitly, within broader strategic investments. Intentionality abounds. As Elizabeth Anderson pointed out, digital was referenced 67 times in the
Wow.
document. And then the kind of things that Emma's pausing over is with the big funding commitment for things like transformation in the 3.25 billion fund for digital transformation and productivity. That's a kind of she's mulling over, and 10 billion to bring the NHS into the digital age. 10 billion. I don't know how that's gonna work out. I know West Streeting's very keen on moving from analog to digital, but we'll see. And then 6 million, that doesn't seem enough for local digital inclusion funding. Seems giddyingly disproportionate, I think,
Mm.
to the previous two
Mm.
billion pound announcements. So yeah, we will see how that goes. And if Emma wants to come on the show again and talk about her kind of her take on things, we'd like to have her. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this week's show. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks to Moses Seitler from Screenshare for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you next week, and have a great week.
Have-
Bye.
Bye.